Hello, this is Mara Jane, and you're listening to The Unseen Perspective. Hi, welcome back to The Unseen Perspective for your official first episode. I am, as I said, your host, Mara Jane, and today I'm going to kind of give you a little introduction on this podcast and what it's like to be visually impaired, which is the whole point of this podcast. So, as I said in my brief little introduction, episode 0, I am in fact visually impaired. I consider myself blind, even though I can see a little bit. I can only see out of my left eye, though. I'm completely blind in my right eye. And in my left eye, I can see about 10 times worse than the average person. So I have 2200 vision, give or take. And I have very bad depth perception and very limited peripheral vision. So this, as well as the various other health problems that I have, make it very difficult to live everyday life. As I said also in my little mini introduction, I had bilateral retinoblastoma as a baby. So this is a rare form of eye cancer, but its treatment caused some other issues that aren't related to my eyes. For example, I have high-frequency hearing loss, and I have hypothyroidism. Hashimoto's thyroiditis is the cause of that, and chronic dry eye, and just some other things that were caused by the treatment that aren't necessarily related to my blindness that make every day a little bit more challenging than it would be without the treatment. I am very grateful that I was treated, though, because otherwise I would have died. So, like I said, I am visually impaired, and I have various other health problems that I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, but it's never really bothered me, the fact that I'm disabled. In fact, I kind of enjoy being unique and being able to read Braille. I think that's very cool. Also, being musically inclined, because I have to focus more on like the auditory world, just things like that. I've pretty much always enjoyed being unique, and at the very least I haven't really been bothered by the fact that I'm different from other people. So why am I making this podcast? Why do I need to feel the need to educate the world on what it's like to be blind if I'm not bothered by the fact that I'm blind? Well, I am bothered. That's just not why. The reason I'm bothered is because I am treated differently because of my blindness, and I am set apart and isolated because of it. So there are a lot of tremendous frustrations that come with being visually impaired or blind, or having any disability, really. Like I said, being set apart and isolated. I'm just so fundamentally different from other people that it's just hard to connect with them on a personal level. So because of this, it's been hard for me for a really long time to make friends. I kind of get along with everyone. I'm pretty friendly, but it's hard for me to make deep, meaningful connections with the fundamental differences that I have. Even though I think it's pretty cool, some of the things that I can do because I'm blind. I've had many experiences of people, when they see my cane, they just kind of walk the other direction. I don't think it's because they think less of me because I'm blind, which some people do, which is obviously wrong. But I think most people are just intimidated by the fact that I'm so different and they don't really know how to behave around me. And that's understandable. But it is very frustrating to have people not even approach me because they don't know what to say, or they're, I don't know, afraid to, intimidated by my weird technologies and devices that I use. But like I said, it is understandable. But that's why I'm making this podcast, to educate people on what it is like to be blind and how to approach someone who is blind or otherwise disabled. So I have oftentimes been frustrated by the idea that the world wasn't made for me. Now, this sounds pretty entitled and selfish probably, but the place where that's coming from is in school and in other public places, or even at my house. I've had so many experiences of just being treated like any other person, which is good, but it's also frustrating when you're told to look at something or do something that you can't see, or when other people are laughing at something visual and you have no idea what they're doing, or just trying to do an assignment that's clearly made for a sighted person, which it makes sense because the vast majority of people who live on Earth are sighted. Even at my school, at St. James, for example, I am the only visually impaired person there. I mean, I'm sure there are other people who have some kind of visual impairment, but these are all visual impairments that can be corrected by glasses or contact lenses, so I guess I should say I'm the only legally blind person at my school. This can be very frustrating for a whole host of reasons, even though I do have a wonderful, wonderful support system that is in place to get me the proper accommodations and making things accessible. It's tremendously difficult to live in an environment that's entirely made up of sighted people. No one really knows what it's like to live every day with a visual impairment. It makes every aspect of life different, and not being able to relate to other people on that level has just been very difficult for me. It's led to feelings of isolation, frustration, disconnection. I have been underestimated more times than I can count, probably. And like I said earlier, it's just difficult to be a source of, I don't know, I guess intimidation. That doesn't really sound like the right word, but when people don't want to approach you just because you're so fundamentally different from them, it's heartbreaking, honestly, because what you really want is for them to ask you questions and to approach you and give you a chance as a friend or a colleague or whatever. But when they don't do that, it just makes you feel like you're not worthy of friendship or relationship or connection, which is obviously not true, but it can feel that way more often than not, and it's very saddening. So, what does being visually impaired mean for my everyday life? Well, I'll talk about this more, obviously, in later episodes, and I'll have some guest stars to help me out with broadening the perspective. But, like I said, I behave and I do things in a way that is so fundamentally different from sighted people that it can make me feel isolated and disconnected from the greater community. But what exactly do I do that's so different? Well, as I said, I can't see at all out of my right eye, and I have limited vision in my left eye, so on a basic level, I can't read small print and I can't see things from far away. So I have to magnify my print or read Braille, and I have to bend over my computer or a worksheet or whatever I'm working on in order to see it, which causes a lot of eye fatigue and back pain. It also just makes me look a lot different than other people do, which doesn't really bother me because if people are staring, I can't see that. But just appearing so differently than the average person causes a lot of anxiety, not just for me, but for other people. And I don't like being the source of someone else's anxiety. I also use a whole host of devices that we will explore in a later episode, so get excited, that make me look a whole lot different than a sighted person would. For example, not only do I use things like Braille note takers and magnifiers on my computer, as well as big portable CCTVs, I also use things like handheld magnifiers, book readers, things that just may look very strange to someone who hasn't been exposed to that sort of thing. My social behaviors are also very different. For example, if someone waves to me or smiles at me from a distance, obviously I can't see that, so I won't respond. And I can see where people would think that's rude or inconsiderate of me when actually I just can't see them. Also, when people say hi to me, this happens so many times, so often. Oftentimes they won't say who they are, so I will have no idea who they are because I can't recognize them. I can recognize a lot of people by their voice, but this isn't flawless. I can't recognize faces, so if someone says hi in the hallway or anywhere, chances are I'm not gonna know who that person is. And I'll try and match their energy and, say hi back, but that's about all that I can do if I don't know who they are. My blindness has also presented a whole host of problems in regards to sports and physical activities. So at St. James, in our community system, we play a lot of games and have a lot of competitions, a lot of which are not accessible to the blind and visually impaired. So sometimes I just sit on the sidelines, which is not ideal, but it's better than getting hit in the face with a ball or something. But sometimes I do try to participate in those kinds of sports and games, and I just don't play at the same level as a sighted person would because I can't see. This has been a big frustration in boys volleyball. I manage boys volleyball, and I have since sophomore year. I'm a senior now. This is my third season managing, and obviously it's not my job to play volleyball with the boys because I'm not on the team, at least not as a player, and so why should I be so frustrated by the fact that I can't play? Well, the coaches and the managers alike oftentimes will play with the boys or participate in some way that obviously requires vision, and it's led me to kind of feel useless as a manager, even though I love hanging out with those boys, and I do love, in a sense, being their manager, just because the community aspect is great, and I do love boys volleyball as a sport, but over the years it's just grown more and more frustrating, I think, to be in that environment and not be able to do a lot of the things that my fellow managers can do or that the players or the coaches can do and do. There's also just so many other things about being blind that make me so different on a fundamental level, like I said, that I just don't think about because it's normal for me. I can tell, though, that I am very, very different from my peers, and this has caused a lot of distancing and isolation for me, and it is that aspect of being blind that frustrates me the most. Being set apart, though, can also be a really good thing. Like I said, I didn't used to like Braille, but now I really appreciate my ability to read Braille, not only because it allows me to have accessible media, but also because I can read in the dark and, I don't know, just read and write in secret. It's like a secret language almost that only blind people can understand, although it's not really a different language, it's still English, but a secret form of reading and writing that you read with your fingers, which is pretty cool. Even though it does set me apart and cause some disconnection from my sighted peers. Being blind has also exposed me to some pretty cool communities. For example, the Kansas State School for the Blind, being a part of that community has been really, really cool because I have friends who understand what I'm going through on a day-to-day basis, and I have teachers and staff members who are used to, I don't want to say dealing with, but working with visually impaired students. Whereas I do love my teachers at St. James, they're wonderful, but they aren't accustomed to working with someone who has low vision. That being said, they have been incredibly adaptable. A lot of them have provided me with what I need, and they've been willing to accommodate for my unique needs, which I appreciate that very much. And like I said, I also have a very good support system at St. James, and just in general. It wasn't always this way, but I think people now are just really willing to listen to what I have to say and accommodate however they can. And now I get the chance to share a very unique and interesting perspective that people can learn about and hopefully be interested in, and hopefully these podcasts are also entertaining. But yeah, Living with a visual impairment or any disability, I would imagine, can be very difficult. Not because of the disability itself or the nature of that, just because of how you're treated and how you navigate the world. So, in the future on this podcast, I'm going to touch on more specific aspects of the visually impaired life. I'm going to have some guest stars, both sighted and visually impaired, to talk with me. We'll be exploring different specific areas about blindness and living with a disability and some of the technologies that we use, some of the misconceptions that people have about us, just all kinds of stuff. So I hope you're looking forward to it as much as I am. But for today, that's all I have for you. So I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day. And I hope you'll tune in next time for our next episode and more episodes in the future. Thank you so much, and goodbye.